Welcome in to Beyond the Red Carpet. It is my pleasure to introduce Micky Dolenz. We're going to have a lot of fun today. Welcome, Micky.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Francine.
You are coming for a concert here. You're on concert tour now. You're coming here on October 11th. Can you tell us what we can expect from your concert now?
If you're a fan of the Monkees, you'll get all the hits. That is number one on top of the priority list. It always has been for me. I always make sure that the audience gets the big hits, and I always have. But then, and I've discovered over the years, decades, that once an audience knows or feels comfortable, they know they're going to get those big hits at some point. Then I've discovered that I can go off, especially when it's a solo show now, which it is now, a solo show. I can do other material. I can do deep Monkee album cuts. I can do some of the more obscure songs that get requested, or I can actually do other artist material, which I did. I was, in cover bands before the Monkees, doing, all the cover tunes of the era. And so I love some of those early tunes. I was weaned on those tunes. And I discovered I can do those. But over the decades, I have discovered that if they're connected to some kind of a story that has to do with me, my life, my history, like I'll give you for instance, in the middle of the show, and I've been doing this for years, I tell the audience, I'm going to do a Chuck Berry tune now. And you may be asking yourself, why is he doing it? Well, a lot of my fans in the audience already know, but a lot of people have not seen me. And so I'll ask you, you may be wondering why I'm doing a Chuck Berry tune. Well, this was the song, this was my audition piece for the Monkees. This is the song that got me the gig. And then I do a Chuck Berry tune, but you'll have to come to the show to hear which one it is. So that's an example of doing songs from other artists, but that have a story. So I do a song by the Beatles because there's a great story behind it. I do a song by Stephen Stills because there's a great story behind it. I do a great song by Elton John because there's a great story behind it. And then, like I say, all of the big Monkee hits. Yeah, and so it's kind of and there's also video, by the way. I'm assuming we're going to have video in your venue. A lot of great video, not just about me and the Monkees, but about the era, about the 60s, and about that whole zeitgeist. It's my favorite new word.
I was going to say what song you had for your tryout for the Monkees, but I will let you tell that in the concert. What a lot of people might not know, and I really wasn't all that familiar with it, before you did the Monkees, and like you said, you were doing a lot of cover songs, but you were also in TV with Circus Boy.
Oh yeah.
And
yeah, I had my first big job was a series on NBC called Circus Boy, which filmed at the same studio that 10 years later I filmed the Monkees at. In fact, we even shot scenes from Circus Boy. Some of the interiors we did on the same stage that I did the Monkees on. Very famous Stage 7 at Columbia Pictures. Yeah, that was a series in the 50s. I was about 10 years old, and it ran for a few years on NBC. And that was my first series. I did many TV shows after that and before the Monkees, guest starring on doing day job, guest starring things on shows of the time, Mr. Novak, Peyton Place, Ben Casey, shows of the late 50s, early 60s.
Well, you started young, and one time I was watching, I don't watch it anymore, they're going to kill me for that, General Hospital, and I saw the credits rolling, and there's Amy Dolenz, and I'm thinking,
Yeah,
that's not a common name. So I looked it up. That's your daughter,
yeah.
and she's an actress. Did you having grown up in the business, so to speak, did you have any reservations about her becoming an actor?
No, I didn't. But again, it's because I feel and have felt that I was brought up in the business, as you say, but by very responsible parents, frankly, very down to earth parents. We did not live the typical uh, Hollywood lifestyle, shall we say. We didn't live in Hollywood or Beverly Hills. We lived on a ranch in the valley with horses and chickens and you know, I'd come home from working on Circus Boy on the weekend, filming the TV show when I was 10, 12 years old, and I'd have to clean the pool. You know, my dad was an actor. Excuse me. He was an actor, but he was from Italy. He was, you know, off the boat from Italy. I'm first generation Italian and very down to earth, not from a showbiz family. My mom was from Texas, again, rural Texas, and a very down to earth family. So again, not the typical Hollywood. And so when I didn't, well, they never in any way enforced, or I don't even remember being encouraged into doing anything in the business. I just basically followed in my parents' footsteps, my dad's footsteps. If he'd have been I don't know, a banker, so I probably would have ended up being a banker. I just followed in his footsteps. It was never that kind of typical cliched, you know, stage mom kind of parent attitude of eyes and teeth, honey, eyes and teeth. Come on.
No Mama
Not
Rose for
never.
you.
What?
No Mama Rose.
No, none of that. And so I remember, for some funny reason, when I went up for Circus Boy, auditioned for it. I'd been up for other shows and TV things, even at that age. And for some weird reason, I remember my mom saying, "Oh, there's a audition for a series. You want to go and do the audition?" And I remember saying, "No, I can't. I got a baseball game, you know, out in the backyard." But for some reason, I decided at the last minute to go to the interview, and of course, the rest is history. But I was never pressured. So anyway, a long way of getting around to your question. So Amy grew up in a showbiz family and never pressured, but I never discouraged her. Mainly my ex-wife, the late Samantha Dolenz, she'd been an actress and a model. Never pressure, but realistic. Always realistic about it, you know, and mainly we just want you to be happy, you know. But it's the same attitude I've had with all my children.
But and also your concert is a family affair because your sister Coco, I believe, is part of your backup singers.
Yes, and lead singer. She also does lead songs too. A great story about a Mike Nesmith tune that the Monkees did not record, which she sings. But you'll have to come to the show to hear that one too.
Okay.
Yes, she's always sang with me when I'm solo, and at times even with other members of the Monkees, David and Peter and Mike. She was also at many times part of the show and sang on some of the early albums doing backgrounds. Yeah.
Well, Monkees is definitely part of pop culture, and you are the last surviving member. Do you feel a little responsibility to keep it going, to keep it alive in the forefront of everybody's, well, like, we're not going to forget it, but do you think you have some kind of inner push to keep it going right now at this point?
Wow, what a great question, Francine. I don't often get asked questions that I haven't heard before, and I think that may be one. Um, I can't remember exactly, but that's a very good question. No, I would say in a word, no, I don't. It's my job. It's my career. It's how I make a living. And I'm very proud of the work that I did on the television show as an actor, playing the part of the wacky drummer. But yeah, it's a good question. But no, I don't feel any sort of obligation. I just keep doing it mainly because that's what I do. And I keep moving. I stay on tour because, frankly, a moving target's harder to hit.
And you're definitely moving around. I mean, I've seen your list of concert dates, and you are keeping busy. The show, I heard you speaking one time that the Monkees was a show about a fictional band, but
Right.
in a way, life imitated art because the band came together and toured outside of the show.
Yes, that's a good point, and I've spoken to that many times. I'll try to be brief, but in a nutshell, yes, the Monkees was a television show about a group. And rather than being like a answer to the Beatles, which was some journalists, made up thing, the Monkees was a television show about a group that wanted to be the Beatles. We had a poster of the Beatles on the set in our set of our where we lived. It was about a group that wanted to be famous. And one of the important aspects of it, one of the important principles right from the get-go, you got to hand it to the writers and producers. On the television show, we were never successful. It was always the struggle for success. We never made it on the TV show. We lived in this rented house on Malibu Beach, which does beg the questions of how we could afford it since we never got any work. But there you go. But it was a set. And we were always trying to be successful. That was the Monkees on the television show, the fictitious group. But the producers must have had in mind from the get-go that they weren't just going to cast actors to play the parts and fill in all the other bits. Excuse me. Fill in all the music, fill in all the vocals, fill in all the singing, whatever. Because part of the audition, a big part of the audition, was the musical part. It was singing. You had to be able to sing a song. You had to play an instrument. I played this Chuck Berry tune on guitar because I was a guitar player actually at the time. That was my audition piece. David, Peter, Mike all had their audition pieces, as everybody else who auditioned. You had to even get anywhere near the auditions. So they must have had in mind that if it happened, if it worked, if the pilot sold, for starters, then eventually the act would go on the road. Now, at that time in 1966, this was unheard of. And that's why a whole lot of people in the business, especially at the time, didn't get it. They just didn't get the Monkees because that had never happened. It had on film the Marx Brothers, which John Lennon made the reference once that the Monkees are like the Marx Brothers on television.
Yes.
Because they performed, they could do it, they could play and sing and act. But so it happened in film, but never in TV until years later, really, when that show Glee came out, which was a show about a fictitious glee club. And yet they could all do it. And very talented entertainers, singers, actors, dancers, whatever. So until Glee or something like that, nowadays, of course, it happens all the time. But back in 66, it was unheard of. But yeah, the producers must have had in mind. And it was Mike Nesmith that once said, when we went on the road for the first time, it was like Pinocchio becoming a real little boy. It was a great line.
And you actually, the Monkees was the very first concert I ever went to. That was it. My first concert. I remember it very vividly. Okay, you had a #1 show. You had #1 albums. you were so busy, and I kind of likened this to David Cassidy, who always, he didn't complain, but he said he had no life because he was on the in the studio, then in the recording studio, then touring and the whole thing. Take us through a typical time when you guys were at the top of your game with the show and the records and the touring. You obviously had no time to rest.
Well, there was that. It was pretty intense, but again, I was only 21, 22 years old. So, you're pretty hardy at that age. I was used to the business. I can't speak for anybody else, by the way. So, and I never do. So this is only my opinion, only from my perspective, my point of view. But I'd been in the business, I'd done a series, so I was used to that process. I'd also done a little recording before the Monkees. I could play, I'd done little shows, singing with my sister a couple times, and in these cover bands, a lot, singing on stage. So I toured a little bit. So I was familiar with basically every aspect of the business to some degree. Nothing compared to what it was like during the, as you say, the heyday. But I don't know, again, I put it down a lot to upbringing. I had a very, very stable home life with my wife at the time and daughter and her parents who lived with us. And she was English. They were English from, right off, came over when I met her and married her, but very down home, Northern England, and didn't put up with any crap, And so we didn't live really the typical, again, 60s Hollywood, sort of lifestyle, very rural up in the mountains in a big cabin. And I was always very active outdoors. Right in the middle of the Monkees during one of the hiatuses, I got film of this. I took a 16mm camera and an 80-pound backpack and climbed Mount Whitney all by myself, which you may know is the tallest mountain in the United States. Well, I've been up to the top 5 times over the years. I go camping even now all the time, off grid, overlanding. I'm a very outdoorsy kind of person, and I have a shop, and I did back then. So when I wasn't on the set or in the studio, I was down in my workshop. Like I made a gyrocopter once and flew it, out in the desert. So I kept busy doing other hobbies, let's call them. I had a lot of other hobbies. I was making a living. My career was showbiz, but I had many other interests. Like, for instance, you probably heard the story when I originally went up for the audition for the Monkees. I was going to college studying to be an architect.
My next question.
I'd already been in showbiz 10 years at that time. I figured I better get serious and find a real life. And my plan was to be an architect. And if I couldn't make it as an architect, I'd fall back on showbiz.
And what a career it's been. Do you have a favorite song from the Monkees?
No, not really. It depends a bit on the genre. There's so many different genres of songs that we did.
Right.
Unlike a lot of other groups, because remember, we had 4 lead singers, not one, and 4 different personalities and 4 different, what's the term? 4 different musical points of view and styles. My singing style and love was rock and roll, especially old time rock and roll and screaming stuff. I got stuck with all those. Davey loved Broadway. He loved ballads. Peter loved bluesy folk music. Mike was hardcore nouveau electro country, and very, very different styles, musical points of view, which was very unusual. Usually traditional group was one lead singer, and that was the musical point of view. and or maybe two, like Lennon McCartney or Everly Brothers or something like that. But usually just one, and that was their group and their musical view and taste. And so for the Monkees, we did all this eclectic stuff, even from the get-go, the early albums. It's very different styles of stuff. And now I forgot what your what your
No, that's
question
okay. But
was.
no, you each took your turn up front, so to speak.
Oh, yeah.
But you know what?
So
Go ahead.
yeah. So my favorite song, it depends. For the other ones I sang, I would say if it was hardcore rock, Pleasant Valley Sunday, rock pop, Carole King and Jerry Goffin tune, or Stepping Stone, Tommy Boyce and Bobby Hart. So many great tunes they wrote. For a pop tune, it would be probably "I'm a Believer," Neil Diamond. Then a ballad, "Sometime in the Morning," that would be Carole King, and Jerry Goffin. So, like I say, it depends on our "Going Down." Was a great jazz rock kind of tune, also, which I love singing. It's funny because when I do my show, my stage show, over the years, I've tried many different Monkee tunes, ones that I thought would work really great on stage, and they just don't for some reason. And other ones I thought never would work live on stage, like album cuts and stuff. And they do, so who knows?
Well, when you first got together with the other three, you didn't know each other. Nobody had known each other. Did it take long for you to meld into a real cohesive group together? Or did you have, I don't want to say infighting, but was there a lot of conflict in the beginning because you were all so different?
Very good question. Another good question. And I have spoke to this. And again, totally from my point of view, I think if God love him, David or Peter or Mike were still around, they might have very different opinions about this, but I can only speak from my point of view. So in that sense, a little bit like Rashomon, the Japanese story. But I remember that we hit it off, again, from my point of view, we hit it off on the TV show, acting wise and comedy wise, instantly. And I think that was had a lot to do with the wisdom of the producers in casting, because on a TV show and a cast, you want different personalities. You don't want everybody to be the same or have the same sense of humor necessarily. It was sketch comedy like the Marx Brothers. How different could four brothers be? But that was something they worked on. That were characters that they developed. And on the Monkees, we developed these characters with the directors and the writers. Not Mike and David and I, not quite as much. There were more extrapolations of our personalities. Peter's the one that had the toughest acting job. His character, the dummy, was anything but what Peter was. He was incredibly intellectual. He went to a conservatory of music. And after the Monkees, he taught school, but he had the toughest job, I would say. But on the set, on the comedy, we hit it off and we just clicked. I remember very, very quickly. Music-wise, again, there were these four different personalities. There wasn't infighting in any sense, but there were creative differences. There always are in any creative unit of any number of people besides one. You get two people you're going to have. If they're creative people, then yeah, there's going to be give and take back and forth. People ask me, what was it like between you guys? And I just always ask, do you have any siblings? Like, for instance, do you?
Yeah, I do.
You do. Need I say more?
I get it. I get it. I hear you.
So that's basically it. But it again, since we didn't grow up together, we weren't relatives like many groups, or known each other since grade school or junior high. We were introduced one day, and I remember the day. It was at a wardrobe fitting at Columbia Pictures. where we filmed the show. And it was, oh, Micky, this is David. David, this is Mike. Mike, Peter, Micky, David, you guys are the Monkees.
And the
And it
rest
was
is
like,
history.
yeah. But that's typical in a TV series, you know.
And you guys did so many wacky things. Like you said, the Marx Brothers, you broke the fourth wall, you spoke to the camera.
Yeah.
You started, well, it didn't come off as a trend then, but so many shows had followed that in the past, since then. And you really became, I can't think of anything other than pop culture, because you just got in there and you gave us something that we had never had before.
No, that's absolutely right. And looking back at the time, you know, I'm 21 years old. Not a lot of this stuff had occurred to me, you know. But looking back, and when I went to England for many years, lived there, producing and directing my own TV shows that I wrote and produced and directed, not acted in, but created. And I look back at the Monkees and I realized, and I'm not sure anybody realized this at the time, but it spoke to that generation. It spoke to all those kids, like I said, that were out there wanting to be in the business, wanting to be singers. But also it spoke to again, that word zeitgeist of the time, which was the hippie kind of thing. And how the Monkees, like somebody once said, the Monkees brought long hair into the living room. And that kind of says a lot about that.
Well, you came along at the right time. I know that. Unfortunately, our time is up together here, and I know everybody's going to be looking forward to the concert, and I am, and it's going to be so much fun. But thank you so much for spending some time with us and filling us in on your life, your career, the Monkees, and if you look over my shoulder, guess who's back there? Monkees. So
Oh, yeah. Wow. Thank you
I
so
want to.
much, Francine. Thank you for your time. I hope to see you at the show.
Okay, well, you take care. And for the viewers, let's take a look at Micky's music video, Shiny Happy People.
Shiny, happy people
So we're going to put the information for the concert right up here on the screen, so you'll have it. And if you don't have tickets already, there's still time to get yours. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
With over 30 years of experience in real estate and the mortgage industry, Darlene Mays provides knowledge and expert guidance to clients looking to buy or sell a home. Serving clients throughout South Orange County, Darlene specializes in the senior community of Laguna Woods Village. Darlene works with her clients to ensure the highest level of service, from the beginning of the process right down to the closing table. If you are looking to buy or sell, who you work with really does matter. Call Darlene Mays today.